Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Ray. I'm a detransitioned male, and today I'm going to be talking about this controversy of trans women being excluded from women's chess. So we all know there's a big controversy with trans women in the women's or female sports category. People say there's like an unfair physical advantage because trans women who have gone through male puberty, they retain, despite hormones, some sort of physical advantage in terms of their strength or their skeletal size or something like this. There's some physical advantage. And so there's been a lot of people, for example Riley Gaines, who have come out and attacked the inclusion of trans women in the female sports category as being, unfair. It's an unfair advantage. Now, there's a recent controversy where one of the international sporting bodies for chess basically said that, trans women can't compete in the women's category in chess because, if you don't know, there are women's and men's categories in the chess world. And people sort of who don't know a lot about chess think this is strange because chess isn't a physical sport, it's a mental sport. So why are there these differences between the male and the female sports division when that doesn't matter if you're taller or bigger or physically stronger. It's more about who has the most brain power. So a lot of people think oh, well, there's a male and female division, so therefore, is the chess sporting world saying that men are inherently, smarter than, women? And so a lot of, people who are fighting for inclusion of trans women in the female sports category, these trans activists, they are sort of saying this is a gotcha. They're saying, you're excluding trans women from the physical sports because of their supposed physical advantages, and now you're just excluding them from the women's category. So the only reason you must be doing that is because you just don't like trans women, or you're inherently biased against trans women, and you're sort of denying them their womanhood, and you're excluding them from the women's category, even though clearly there's no sporting advantage for being, born male versus born female when it comes to, chess ability. But I want to sort of take this and sort of, put on my theory cap a little bit here because, it is interesting that the differences in the male and female chess abilities. If you look at the top 100 players in the chess world right now, they're all male. None of them are female. So there are some people out there, different grandmasters, both male and female, chess masters have come out and said that, well, the reason that it ultimately explains why there's this difference, why do males seem to perform so much better at chess, is because of an inherent advantage. Males are just inherently hardwired to be better at playing chess than females. And in our culture, which sort of has been derived from the kind of postmodernist gender theory world, where any biological sex difference is minimized between the males and females, particularly when it comes to mental abilities or innate cognitive abilities. There's this idea that all differences between males and females are best explained by cultural or social factors or something like this. So on this model, the best explanation for why males perform better at chess than females is not because of an inherent, brain difference or something like this. It's because of the statistical facts that, there just happen to be more male chess players. And so the fact that there's more male chess players in historical time means that you're going to have, through sheer statistical chance, more top male players than top female players, just by statistical chance. And when you combine the statistical facts in regards to the distribution of the number of male versus female chess players, and then you combine that with the historical biases that female chess players have had when trying to get into the chess world, because chess is a very male-dominated social world, and so females are going to have these disadvantages, socially, that that makes it an unwelcoming space for females. And so because it's socially unwelcoming, because there are these social and cultural biases against female chess players, then that is going to suppress the amount of females getting into the chess world. And because of that, that's going to keep perpetuating the statistical phenomenon where there are, not as many like top ranking female players. And so on this account, we can explain, all the differences in male versus female ability sheerly through external factors, social factors, cultural bias, all this stuff. And we don't have to posit any intrinsic difference between the male brain and the female brain in order to account for the observed phenomenon that, male chess players are truly dominant in the sport. Now, I'm not going to make a stand here in terms of like giving, my opinion about what's the true explanation, or whether males like truly do have an inherent brain difference. But what I want to comment on in this video is the idea that merely proposing the hypothesis, the conjecture, the contention, merely proposing it as a possibility that there is an intrinsic difference between the male brain and the female brain, it is considered so taboo that you can't even propose that as a hypothesis without being canceled. Because in our culture, it has just become like absolutely toxic to suggest that there might be intrinsic differences between males and females. And to me, as someone who has studied evolution and understands evolutionary psychology, to me, it seems at least possible that over the course of evolutionary history, there would have been differential selection pressures, both from natural selection and sexual selection, that would have made it likely that the male brain would evolve different intrinsic patterns of propensity or potentiality versus female brains. Given that there are differential selection pressures in terms of what makes a female evolutionary successful versus what makes a male evolutionary successful. Obviously, a female has to be in some respects like hardwired to be attuned to the process of giving birth or something like this, because this is part of like what females do in the evolutionary history. They give birth to children. That's not all they do. Obviously, they do other things, but there's at least some biological difference between males and females. So if there's at least some selection pressure that drives a biological difference between males and females in the realm of reproduction, why is it so hard to imagine the possibility that there could be differential selection on the intrinsic hardwiring of the brain in terms of, biasing certain ways of thinking? And there has been a lot of research done on, the fact that there are sex differences in patterns of cognition. And this is again speaking about averages, but on average, there are sex differences such that males seem to perform better on spatial ability, spatial reasoning, spatial awareness. There is some statistically significant difference between a male's spatial ability than a female. Now, some people have tried to explain this entirely in terms of, again, social and environmental and cultural factors. But if we grant that all of evolution drives itself forward through some combination of nature and nurture, why are we only allowed as a culture to, like hypothetically propose differences in culture without any hypothetical, possibility of proposing that there's difference at the intrinsic brain level? Now, I'm not saying there are, maybe the research isn't there yet, but it should at least be possible to propose it as a possibility. But in our culture, it's not even possible to propose this as a hypothetical possibility that one can investigate through research. Now, let me give you a analogy here. There's been a lot of research showing that females are better at theory of mind tasks. They have higher emotional intelligence. They kind of have more emotional abilities and social abilities. They're more socially intelligent, more emotionally intelligent. They have better theory of mind. So they seem to be more skilled in the social realm. Now, suppose there was a game out there that in some respects depended on these social skills. And in this game, females were the top performers than males. Now, would it be so terrible and would it make you a bigot to suppose that the reason why females are better at that game is because of a evolutionary adaptive advantage in a social intelligence? To me, that's not a question of being bigoted or biased against women, nor does it mean that women would be smarter than men, because smartness is many different things. There's this idea of multiple intelligence. There's kinetic intelligence, bodily intelligence. There's musical intelligence. There's spatial intelligence. There's social intelligence. There's IQ. There's EQ. There's all these different ways of being intelligent, and all of them serve different purposes depending on the context. So, in the modern workplace, for example, there's been a lot of research showing that emotional intelligence is more important for career success than IQ. So EQ is a better predictor of success in the workplace than IQ. Now, if there was definitive proof that females had inherently better EQ, emotional intelligence, than IQ, does that mean that women are smarter than men or better than men? Why are we so allergic to talking about intrinsic sex differences as if this somehow means we're bigots by referring to evolution? We shouldn't be afraid to talk about the fact that evolution creates dimorphic abilities, not just in the body, because if we grant that men are on average taller and stronger and all these different things, why is it so the brain is just a piece of meat? It's just a physical thing, and evolution selection pressure can operate on the physical meat of the brain just as much as the physical meat of the body. From the evolutionary perspective, there's no difference between the brain and the body. They're both potential sites of selection pressure, and given that there are different selection pressures for what makes a male successful versus what makes a female successful, why are we so allergic to talking about the mere potential of there being these differences. Now, I'm not saying there are these differences. Maybe, like a lot of this can be explained by culture and stuff like this. I'm not denying that there are cultural factors that play. There absolutely are cultural factors that play. What drives me crazy is the fact that merely talking about the hypothetical possibility and proposing that we do research into answering this question to tease apart what's nature and what's nurture, like we're not even allowed to talk about that as a hypothetical, because you'll get painted as a bigot by merely supposing that there are biological differences, as if people can get a degree in gender and have zero knowledge about biology and evolution, which to me is like it's just not being truthful. I think we've been so duped by this sort of postmodern queer theory that postulates that biology is irrelevant and that there's no such thing as sex difference, and the only thing that drives differential abilities or traits or dispositions between males and females, it's all culture, it's all society, it's all language, it's all bias, and that it's like I don't know, it just boggles my mind that we're not allowed to take evolution seriously. We can talk about differential cognitive abilities in other animals, in the animal world. It's okay to talk about this. You're not not going to be labeled a bigot if you say that I don't know, I'm just making up an example, that a male spider has a different cognitive wiring than a female spider. No one's going to say you're a bigot if you propose that as a hypothetical possibility that needs to be researched. But as soon as you go into the human world, suddenly it's this taboo thing that you're not supposed to talk about. And like I'm repeating, I'm not saying there is or there isn't a difference. I'm just saying we ought to be able to talk about the possibility and do investigative research using the methods of empirical science to answer the questions, and we shouldn't be afraid of the truth. And if the truth comes out saying there is a difference, that doesn't mean it's good or bad. For example, if the scientific research said that women are superior at theory of mind, that doesn't mean that men are stupid or bad or whatever. Because theory of mind is relevant in some contexts and not others. You don't need to have superior theory of mind to be a sprinter or to play football, or maybe you do if you're a quarterback or something, but you get my drift. If your profession is physical strength, it doesn't matter that you don't have theory of mind. But if your profession is the human world, then theory of mind is a good thing. But this idea that only if we're all perfectly equal, we're all perfectly equal, that's the only scenario where the world would be just. The world can be just, and we can be fair, and we can treat people with respect and dignity, and not be bigots and not be biased against people. We shouldn't judge someone if they don't have good enough theory of mind, but at the same time, we should be able to talk about this in a way that just doesn't immediately paint you as a bigot for proposing these things as a possibility. So that's what I wanted to talk about in regards to the whole trans woman at chess thing. I'm not saying that, males are inherently better at chess than females, but I'm saying it's not metaphysically impossible that is the case. It should be on the table as a possible hypothesis that we do research into that question. And if the research gives us an answer that is not politically correct, then we shouldn't reject it on the basis of it being politically incorrect, because we ought to be unafraid of exploring the empirical truth. Because when we lose our ability as a society to understand the truth in an objective sense using the empirical methods of science, we have gone astray as a society. Because it is the Enlightenment values of truth-seeking, of objectivity, of reason and empiricism that have grounded our society in some bedrock of truth. And when we become divorced from the truth and are unable to state the truth, then that is when things go awry. That is a bad thing. Because, I don't know. It's just so weird to me that people are so ignorant of. It's not just ignorance of the truth or of science or biology. It's just that they're sort of they're afraid of what reality might tell them, so they want to impose a narrative upon reality under the philosophical assumption that the narrative, our desires, our sort of political ideological beliefs, that they are the shapers of reality, and that if we only have the right narrative in our minds, we can create a better, just world. So if only we believe a certain thing, then that will make it come true, or something like this. So we can impose our narrative on reality and just magically, create, our own vision of the world, independent of any actual objective reality in regards to, biology or how things work. And I don't know, it just seems like such a naive epistemology to me, such that, we're kind of afraid of the truth, I guess. We are willing to suppress the truth if the truth is uncomfortable. And this is sort of I think we're moving away from the purpose of science. So I don't know, I'll stop here. I'm rambling. So thanks for watching. Bye.